a couple of words about the Reactor Toronto Meetup group. It's a Microsoft program that exists in different cities in the world, including Toronto. It's a program dedicated to the local communities, to people interested in sharing knowledge, technology related, especially Microsoft's technology. And they have a number of sessions happening all the time. They have their own meetup group, so feel free to check them there and feel free to register. There's a lot of very interesting content going on all the time there. Our next meetup sessions, we are still deciding on January, still adjusting some details with possible presenters. And for February, we will have Mark Proctor presenting about Power Automate, Office scripts, and Excel, how we can use that to automate and achieve the one-click dream. Just one click to get an entire process automated. And there's more coming up, but I learned not to advertise sessions too much ahead of time, because then life happens and then I need to be changing dates and advising people. So stay tuned. Things will be posted on Meetup and you will get those emails. There's also Faraz usual post on LinkedIn. Feel free to check and to follow him. He always posts a calendar for all the meetups about Excel going on and Power BI and things like that. So there's still a couple of things happening now in December. Feel free to check them there as well. Okay, just giving a time for anyone that might want to take a picture or so to to find information later. Other events happening. There's the MVP Conf happening in Brazil, or from Brazil to the world, starting tomorrow. And the sessions are mostly in Portuguese, but they also have sessions in Spanish and English. All things about technology, not only Excel, Power Platform, DevOps, you name it. And they have, I think, about 300 sessions or something like that. And all the proceeds, it's a paid event, but it's not expensive at all, very affordable, and all the proceeds go to charity, to different organizations there in Brazil. They also have an organization planting trees for every person subscribing, attending, for every attendee in Amazonia. So I mean, it's a wonderful event. If you can participate, feel free to check that. There's the link there at the top. You can still register, although it starts tomorrow and goes throughout the weekend. Then there's the Power to Excel, the Global Excel Summit, happening in February. It's a paid event as well, but it's one of the largest, if not of the biggest event about Excel. It's the second edition into 2022. I'll be presenting there. If you want to take advantage of the early bird price that is still happening, you can, and you can have an extra 10% discount if you use this coupon code Celia10. So feel free to check that out as well. They have different conferences. They have master classes on the side as well. So a lot of content, valuable content there. And I finally got the courage to put my own course out there. It's happening tomorrow. I'll be delivering a masterclass where I'll be talking about the method that I usually use in Excel to automate Excel procedures. I'll be talking a lot about Power Query, but not only that. And at the end, I'll be offering my course to those of you who might be interested in register. So feel free to register. There's a link here. There's the QR code as well, snapreportschamp.com. You can register there to get all the information about the access to the event. And here we are, George. We have George today, George Mount. I'm going to read the official bio that we have on Meetup. So George Mount is the founder of StringFast Analytics, a data consultancy specializing in workforce development. His goal is to help analysts think more holistically about the data tools they use. He is the author of Advancing into Analytics, just released this year. And George blogs frequently about data at stringfastanalytics.com. His blog posts are amazing. I really especially enjoy those blog posts where George focuses on a specific job, a specific business area, for example, like HR or teachers or nurses, and then prepares materials for that specific group, helping them learn how to analyze their data, how to prepare their data, how use Excel, and probably not just Excel, other tools as well. So George, thank you so much. There's George social media information there on the screen. Feel free to connect with George there. There's my links, my information as well. Feel free to comment about the session if you find value in it and use the MS Excel Toronto hashtag. And that's it. Now, George, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. The session has been scheduled for a long time now, but that's what I was saying before. Life happens, and George has not been feeling so well lately, so he still wanted to. I offered George the possibility of rescheduling, but George wanted to present today. So thank you so much for making that effort.
Just like Jordan.
What happened? Oh, okay. Thank you so much, George. Let us know what are you teaching us today? Where can we find you, and what are you up to these days?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Some of you may know this is my second time presenting to this meetup. I'm sure you can find the other one somewhere. That is on statistical analysis and using Excel as a teaching tool for learning a bit of statistics. I am working right now on a second book with O'Reilly, the publisher of the first book. I'm gonna, I think, give away a couple copies of this tonight. I know I didn't bring that up with Celia, and I usually do discuss the logistics, but like I said, I've been kind of laid up lately. We will discuss those details in a bit. So I'm working on that second book, also putting together some new courses. I have an R for Power BI users course coming out as we speak, more or less, with the Enterprise DNA team. So if anybody frequents that site, it'll be on Udemy. I don't have any more details about that, unfortunately, right now, but I'm sure I can send some over to Celia, or I'll put my connection details here so you can stay in touch with that. So anyway, tonight we're talking about Python and Excel. As some of you may know, it's a really coveted feature, and there's a lot of questions about it. You know, I was reflecting how, for as popular and in demand this request is, I think there are just a lot of questions and a lot of confusion about why, you know, what's going on with this. So I'll try to answer as much as I can. You know, a lot of it's still going to be speculative, and we can get into the nature of how Python's going to fit into Excel or not. But, you know, some of that is in debate right now. It's in development, or maybe it isn't. And, you know, depending on what Microsoft decides to do, there's still going to be a place for you to use Python in your analytics toolkit. That's really one of the things that I really try to drive home, is that, yeah, there's so much to learn these days with analytics, right? I mean, there's Power BI, there's Power Apps, there's Excel, there's so many things. But you can learn a little bit of Python and add that to your toolkit, and you don't need to become a data scientist, and you can still get a tremendous amount of value and contribute that value back into whatever you want to do, talking about the one-click dream. I actually talked to Mark Proctor. I hope he doesn't mind me divulging that, but we did talk the other day, and he mentioned that he is working on those tools, and Python is becoming a more important part of the stack that he's using to build some of those automations. So anyway, hopefully I'm selling it to you. If you have any questions, use the chat at any time. I want to make this as interactive as possible. And one of the things, mentioning the blog, this is all based on a white paper that I wrote. So I think the title of the top was like what you should know. I think a listicle is a little nicer, right? Using like a 5-point is what I'm doing here. So 5 things Excel users should know about Python. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to put this in the chat. And you're welcome to, you don't have to read it right now, but what you can do, oops, that's not what I wanted. What you can do is there's going to be a place to subscribe. Now, if you're already subscribed to my newsletter, you can try to find it here, or you can, resubscribe yourself. I'm sorry, it's a little clunky right now that you can't use the same email address to sign up twice, but go ahead and put this in the chat. I'm putting it in the chat. You can subscribe to it here. That's going to get you a white paper that accompanies what you've learned today, so you can kind of, watch the recording if you want, or you can read the white paper. And what I'm going to do is whoever has signed up for that, I'll go and pull a couple of names based on who signed up for this white paper. So I'll share it again at the end. And based on those couple of names, I will get you a copy of the book, Advancing in Analytics. Now, depending on where you're located, if it's some countries, I can get you a paperback. Otherwise, it's going to be an ebook. So that's how that works. But basically, your homework for right now is sign up for the white paper. That'll get your name on the list, and then I'll pull a couple of those names later and then get you a copy of the book. And you'll get a really good white paper. I think it's, actually pretty, and, it's a 15, 20-page white paper. It's not, there's no fluff. This isn't, I'm not, just making you do that so I get your name. I want you to stay in touch, and I want you to learn Python, and I hope that's why you're here. So if you have any questions about that along the way, that's why I'm here too. Okay, the other thing is that all of the resources that we're using right now are going to be in this GitHub repo. Now, I think in the resources for the class, I said a bunch of things that you needed to download. I'm not really sure why I did that, because you don't need to at this point. You're certainly welcome, and it's great if you downloaded VS Code in Python. But like Celia mentioned, people have stuff to do. So if you didn't, that's fine. What I'm going to have you do is go to this repo. Now, everything you're going to need for this presentation, except for that white paper, is going to be available right here. And if you're not familiar with GitHub, that's fine too. Microsoft owns GitHub, by the way. So I'm not, like totally pulling your leg when I'm using these things and saying it's important to know. Microsoft owns GitHub. Python already works with Power BI. So the stuff that I'm saying is not, pie in the sky. It's happening. So go ahead and go to this repo. What you're going to do, if you want the slides and you want all the files, you can just download a compressed folder here. That'll go on your computer. The other thing I would like you to do is, and I have this on the slide as well, we're going to run everything on the cloud tonight with Python. So you don't need to have Python on your computer. Talk about the one-click dream. Here's our one-click Python dream. So what I'm going to have you do is just click this launch binder button right here. This is going to open up a Python session on your computer. It might take a few minutes, so it's a good thing. It's a good thing to do it now. So again, that's going to be, and I may as well. Actually, you'll find it on the repo. So go ahead and do that, and you'll see that the wheels are turning. It's launching an image of the repo. So go ahead and do that. And if you have any questions, this is a good time to do it. I see somebody posted about the developer of Python is working with Microsoft right now. So again, this is kind of the state of the world. What we're doing today, talking about how to use Excel and Python together for data analytics, and really show you how easy it is to get into it, right? Like if you're using Excel, you've already worked with functions, you've already worked with tables, you've worked with a lot of these things that are going to be the same in Python. And then showing some tangible use cases for actually using them together, because that's probably a goal of yours, right? Is to use Python to enhance what you're doing already with Excel. So I'll give you, I have a tiny little demonstration at the end, just to kind of show you what's possible. And, along the way, what I also want to do is address some of these common questions about, well, there's Power Query, so why did I learn Python? Or, there's VBA, so how does that relate? How do those work? That is all good stuff to discuss tonight. Okay, our unofficial objective is I hope that you enjoy this and you have fun with it. Otherwise, why would we be doing it? Also, you could win a book, possibly, and I will give you resources to read it for free if you would like to later on. And I'm talking about my book, Advancing in Analytics. Yeah, so thank you, Anthony, for that question. What you want to do is go back to the repo. So I'm going to go to here, and here's the repo. All of the resources for the presentation are available here. You want to run this link. So run this link. And what that's going to do is populate a Python environment, and we'll walk through how to use it in a bit here. And if there are any, thank you. Yeah, if there are any questions, then anytime I'm between CLA and I will find you. Okay, so first one, we've got 5 points. I think we get through all of them. Open source is a license to build and distribute. So I think it's really important to understand the origin story of Python as it relates to something like Excel. Python is an open source programming language. What that means is that anybody's free to take the Python, in this case, source code, and modify it, distribute it. There's little to no intellectual property rights given to Python by its nature. That's its license. And think of, for example, you trying to like build your own version of Excel and distribute it on your own. You know, like I don't think Microsoft would appreciate if you tried to sell your own version of Excel. That's totally cool with Python, and that's what we're going to use, or that's what the book uses. So it's just a very different way of doing things. I think it's important to bear that in mind, that it's just coming from a different place, kind of philosophically almost. And for a long time, Microsoft was not really on board with open source. There was actually pretty famous debate between Microsoft and open source about being intellectual property thieves and all that. But it's not really like that anymore. I mean, Microsoft, like I said, owns GitHub, which is very well known for working with open source. Here's from Microsoft's own website. They like Linux, which is an open source operating system. So there's been definitely kind of a coming to terms, and that's one thing that's really interesting to think about when you are learning something like Power BI. There's already opportunity to work with Python and R now. They want you to be using it, and that's probably going to be more and more of the case with Excel and Python, and we'll talk about that in a bit too. Okay, so as far as the stack of tools we're going to use with Python, the first one's going to be obviously Python, which you could go to python.org and download, and that's kind of like the official source code. There's a nonprofit foundation that oversees it. There's a lot of documentation and everything there. But like I said, there's very little intellectual property attributed to Python. So in this case, this Anaconda, which is a for-profit company, what they went ahead and took that Python source code. They have a distribution of it, which means that they bundle it with some other packages. We're going to talk about the importance of packages in a bit here. They're bundling it with different applications to access the Python source code. And then you're using that. That's how you're accessing Python. And then we're going to use something called a Jupyter Notebook, which is like a browser-based application to actually interact with the Python code. You think about Excel, everything's kind of all under one roof, right? The interface you're using, the source code, everything's kind of packaged into one application. Python is a little different. Everything's kind of working. The source code, the interface is all different. Okay, so hopefully you already did this. And if not, go ahead and again, go to the repo. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my, oops, didn't want to do that. Go back to this Jupyter lab here. So what we're going to do is just get the basics of working with Python, working with Jupyter Notebooks. I am going to, and again, I'm up here, this link. If you have any problems with this, just try to refresh the computer, and that'll probably fix it. So go ahead and click on Notebook, and we're going to be in this IPYNB file here. Okay, so this is the file extension for a Jupyter Notebook. this is what, there are other ways you can work with Python, other file extensions, just like there are other Excel file extensions, right? There's macro enabled, there's binary. This is just one of the file extensions you can use to work with Python. There are a few options over here to the side. So one of them is Markdown. We're not going to spend a lot of time with this, but one of the things that Jupyter Notebooks tries to do and does pretty well is let you tell a story with your data. So for example, I could, if you've ever seen, people using asterisk, for example, to emphasize what they're saying, hello world, and then I can hit enter. So what I'm going to do is control enter. There's also a little play button here. And then you see that the text is rendering using this plain text formatting. So I could, make this a header, so on and so forth. Except I didn't make that code. I wanted to make that markdown and not code. So we have a header. So the idea here is that this is a very modular way to work with your code and your text. This kind of way of working with a file, I think you're going to see more and more with even Microsoft. I've heard that there will probably in the future be a way to have a document where you've got a little bit of Excel functionality, and then there's going to be a block with Word, and then everything's going to kind of turn into one modular document. So that's how Jupyter Notebooks work, and the main ones are going to be Python code and then Markdown. So this isn't a class on Markdown, but it's good to know. And again, I think if you go up here, is there a thing here for Markdown? Yeah, right here. So go to the help menu here on Jupyter Lab. This is going to look a little different if you download Python onto your computer. This format is just a little different than what you'll see on your computer versus right now. But go ahead and play around with it. Again, I want to make this as interactive for you as possible. So you're not just listening to me talk. I'm totally cool if you want to just kind of spin the wheels as I'm talking. And if you run into anything as you're just kind of kicking the tires, let me know. Ask a question and we can take a look. So, you have free license and you're not going to break anything because this is on somebody else's server right now. Just go for it. OK, so I'm going to do our first Python coding. And this is going to not be revolutionary, I don't think. Let's do 1 + 1, right? You can do that in Excel, too. Not a big deal. I'm going to hit the play button, or again, I could do Shift Enter or Control Enter. There are different keyboard shortcuts. I think if I go up to help here, well, there's not here, but if you download this on your computer, you'll see there are a bunch of keyboard shortcuts you can use. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and 1 + 1 = 2. Big whoop. But hey, we're doing Python coding, and we're 5 minutes into the presentation, right? Pretty good. So basic arithmetic, same idea. A lot of the functions are going to be the same, and you use functions all the time. So again, trying to get you less freaked out about learning Python. Let's take a look at something like, the absolute value of -100. Well, that's the same thing as it would be in Excel, basically. A couple of differences, right? So one of the things is going to be, obviously, we don't have to use the equal sign or plus sign at the beginning. What I am going to do is take the absolute value of -100 here, and that's going to throw an error. So Python is case sensitive, and I think I have a couple of these exceptions and things to be aware of in the next demo. So I'm not going to get too far into depth here, but what I'm hoping for you to do right now is just not be intimidated to just play around with this, do a basic, and maybe you have to calculate tax or a tip or something. Go to Python and do it, right? I mean, just get familiar with it. And you could even do it. You don't even have to download anything. You could come back to this repo and open it up and practice it there. Yeah, Bren is saying that we're not using NumPy or Python. Well, we're not using it yet, but we will talk about those in a moment here. So point 1, open source means a license to distribute and use as you will. And this is a pretty good example where we're doing all this totally free. We haven't had to pay for anything yet. OK, so we've talked about this, Jupyter Notebooks. Now we're going to get into some of these kind of idiosyncratic ways about Python. And they do seem really peculiar at first, but you'll come to love them. Just like a spouse or something, maybe. Their flaws hopefully become adorable to you. Otherwise, that might not be good. OK, so let's go to thing 2. And again, I'm back here. What you're going to see is all of the files are available over here on the side, and I'm going to click on thing 2 here, and this is a pre-populated Jupyter Notebook. So, we're just kind of learning the fundamentals, just so you're familiar with how Python thinks, how it works, and then we'll, time permitting, get more into some of the specific use cases for Excel. And if you have any questions, then let me know at any time. So how does Python handle some of these basic things, right? I'm going to embed, and this is pretty cool if I do say so myself, I'm going to embed an Excel workbook right inside our Jupyter Notebook. So it's just an HTML iframe, but here it is. We have a range here, and we've probably all done things like this where we're taking, okay, so John is getting a 502 error. Can you try to refresh your file, or let me put the link to the repo back in the chat. Yeah, if you're getting an error, and I'm not sure what 502 is, I think it's a timeout. But I'm going to go ahead and let's just index our range here, and I have that named, and hey, I want the third element, fair enough. I can, uppercase, perfect. I can take the uppercase of A4, and it really doesn't matter the case that I use for the function, right? It kind of fixes itself to uppercase. It's going to be a little different in Python. So, for example, we talked about the absolute value already. It's case sensitive. One thing that we're going to do with Python is store everything as objects. So you can kind of think of this. Celia is asking, what's the code to use the Excel embed? So what I'm doing here is, if you may have seen it before, it's a lot easier to do in Office Personal than a business subscription. But what you can do is go to your OneDrive. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm not logged into my personal account. But you can go to your OneDrive, and as you click on the different options, there's one to embed, and then you can pull that embed code. So this is just an HTML iframe that I have embedded into the notebook. You could do this on a website or wherever else. HTML is HTML. But like I said, you need to enable the permissions and things like that if you're on a business, if you're trying to do a OneDrive on business. So anyway, let's go back here. I'm going to go ahead and assign data to an object. Okay, so think of this, and this is going to be one of those kind of missing links and a big kind of quantum leap between what you do in Excel versus Python. So for example, you could think of this as putting the number -10 into a box called A. This is kind of storing that box in memory, and then you can refer to that box whenever you want in this session. So for example, I'm taking the number -10, I'm assigning this data into something called A, and then from there I can operate on whatever is inside A. For example, I'm using a function this time. So I'm going to run that, and again, this is case sensitive too. So it does matter how you capitalize things. That's what, if you remember 2 or 3 things tonight, what case sensitivity is probably going to be one of them, I hope. Okay, another one is how Python counts. Okay, so this is going to actually be an important distinction between Excel and Python. And I think, Anthony, there are some similarities between naming ranges and cells and things like that, and naming objects. Okay, so we've got our spreadsheet here. I've just got to embed it again. I'm going to do something that's going to look a lot like a list in Python here. So again, trying to find those similarities and where things are more similar than they're different, I think is a great learning tool here. So I've got my 5 cells here. I'm kind of assigning it to a range, right? The range is going to be called liters. So I'm, kind of naming a range. Henry is asking, can you work in Excel and embed Python? So yes and no. If we get around to it, you'll see how you can automate the production of an Excel workbook. There are ways to do that, Henry. So one good use case is you could set up a user-defined function, or UDF, in Python, but call it from Excel. So maybe you want to set up a function that runs descriptive statistics, or maybe you want to like set up your own API function, right? Like you want to pull something from Yahoo Finance. I mean, there are those stock types in Excel now, so maybe you don't need to. But there are ways to run and call Python code from Excel already. There are probably going to be kind of a more official way to do that, but there are some possibilities to execute Python directly from inside of Excel. We're not going to do that right now because to do that properly, you need to have everything installed in a working environment. And, just because that can be a little hard to get set up, I wanted to focus more on the Python theory, right? And just let people click a button and start working rather than having to kind of get everybody's environments up and running. But that is a possibility. A book that would be good for that is this Python for Excel. This is kind of right now the Bible on more of the development side of working with Python and Excel. My book, Advancing into Analytics, is a little more about the data science, more or less data analytics, statistics and things like that. Yeah, Excel. Yeah, so this book is written by one of the developers of Excel Wings. There's also one, and I forget the name, that you can develop add-ins for Excel with Python, but I don't remember the name, and I thought that one was a little expensive, to be honest. This is kind of like a freemium package to work with Python and Excel, and you can read the book. Yeah, is that the one that does the add-ins? If anybody's used it, let us know. I've dabbled with it, but I can't say I've done a lot. I've done more with Excel Wings, and this one's a freemium model where, depending on what you're doing, a lot of it's free, but then there are some things which is interesting too, because Python's totally free, but then people end up, you could build a business on something that's free. So yeah, it's just interesting even from a business perspective, right, to kind of understand how this stuff works. Anyway, I know I'm getting off topic here, but I think that's great because then people kind of get what they want out of this. I want this to be as conversational as possible. So we have our range here. I'm going to go ahead and print that. So when I'm printing something, it's almost like I said, you put your data into that box, and then what you're doing is opening that box and seeing what's inside. So I'm doing that right out here. And now what I'm going to do is index that, which is something you probably do in Excel a lot. Same idea here in Python. So let's say I want the third item in the list. Not so fast, because if we go back here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So what's the rub here? Well, Python counts everything from 0. And again, this seems like, why are you telling me this? Why is it important? But you're really not going to get very far. Yeah, typing with Python, John, is kind of interesting, and the Python for Excel book talks about how variable types work. But the way that Python works is almost meant for you not to declare your own variable types. You can do it, but it's not really encouraged in a way. So that gets into the kind of object-oriented programming background of Python. But yeah, for the most part, you just kind of put with the data, then Python just declares the type on its own. So we've got strings right now. You can use, so there's a couple ways to know what type you're working with. There's like the type function. So I could see here that that's a list. A list is a collection of objects. So if I were to do something like the type of A, we'll see int for integer. Okay, so Python counts from 0. Brent says that it's all over the place too. Yeah, so that's a good call out there. The analogy I like to use for this is the way you download files is zero-based index, right? Let's say you were really excited to get a data set. You keep clicking download. The way that works is actually the first one is data set, and then you have data set 1, 2, and so forth. So, this is kind of implicitly 0. So when you count things, you're counting from 0. VBA2, unless you said object-based 1. Yeah, so, maybe this is less foreign than it, may seem for a lot of Excel users, which is good for the crossover here. So I'm going to run this, and you actually want number 2. The other thing which is really interesting and pretty unique to Excel, or sorry, to Python, is this idea of indentation. So white space matters with Python, depending on what you're doing. For something like a loop, which is what we're going to do here, right? We're just going to run through our list here, and we're going to lowercase every element in this list. If I run this, you're going to get an error. You need to indent depending on what you're doing, and then that gets into the debate between tabs and spaces. But either work depending on what program you're using. And I'm gonna go ahead and loop through here, lowercase each of these in the list. So Henry is asking how dates are parsed. That's a good question. So for something like working with dates, I would suggest a couple of things. You're probably going to have that in a table, right? So the data we're working with might not be realistic to what you're actually going to do. You're probably going to have a data set with rows and columns. For something like that, pandas is going to be the answer, and pandas is pretty intelligent with how it works with dates. There are ways, if you're reading in an Excel file and you need to parse the dates in a certain way, then it will do its best to detect the date type, and then you can set up different date formats. So I would suggest if you've got a use case where you need to work with dates, you'll probably be using pandas for that. So these are just some of the real basic operations with Python to be familiar with. Regardless of what you end up doing with it, you should be aware of these kind of basic idiosyncrasies. And let's go back to the slides here. So that was number 2. It can be finicky or logical. Hopefully you get used to it after a while. Okay. Number 3 is packages. Okay. So John is asking, is the date 12/9/21? I think by default, well, you can specify whether you want like month, day, year, or year, month, day, or whatever. I think by default it takes the American format, but I could be wrong. In fact, where do we go? Let's see what we can find here. Okay, so I'm going to go to help, and I'm going to go to pandas reference. And here's our documentation. It opens up, yeah, ISO, right. So if we look at dates, okay, so I would suggest kind of playing around with how you want your date set up. I don't know how terribly helpful this documentation is at the moment, but it looks like we've got some real-time fact checking going on in the comments. Yeah, okay. All right, there's a package for that. So there's another way to answer this, that regardless of the use case, there's probably going to be a package to help you out. Yeah, I've been talking about Python, or pandas, I should say. And these are kind of the Fab Four of packages. These names have already been used, or at least some of them are. So the idea with a package, and actually let me show this slide first, and then we can go back to the other one, is think of these as almost like the apps of Python. So except that they're all free, or most of them are free. So when you get a phone, it probably comes with a few apps, right? It's got a calendar, you could take notes and this and that, and that's pretty helpful. But really the utility and the value comes in downloading various apps, right, to help you out with whatever you want to do, or waste your time with it. But anyway, with Python, it's a similar idea, where it comes with a core of apps, and that's called the standard library. It's got some other, real basic utilities to work with the operating system, work with dates, just the real core computing capabilities. But a lot of the really popular and powerful things, and why Python's become so potent of a tool in the data space, is usually a lot of the packages. Python wasn't really built to work with data analysis per se. A lot of the core data types are really more having to do with how operating systems work and how object-oriented programming works, and they really weren't meant to be arranged in rows and columns like Excel is, right? Like everything in Excel and Power BI is kind of based around a table of rows and columns. That's not really the case with Python per se. However, when you start using these packages, and pandas is a big one here, then we start to get into that kind of mental model of rows and columns and everything kind of emanating from there. So the way this works is, you've got a couple of steps, just like you would with your phone. You need to install it generally. Now, it gets a little hairy about how you install it because we talked about Anaconda. Some of those packages are available from Anaconda. You can download their distribution of it. Others, you can go back to the Python Foundation source. So you can check out this blog post. I've got it linked here, and you've got the slides now yourself. So you download it, and then you open it, just like with the phone, right? You would download an app, and then if you want to use it, you open it. And the code that you use are listed here. So I talk about this more in the book as well, and then this blog post is helpful. So as far as some names to be aware of, these first two have to do more with data manipulation and analysis. So, think of the stuff you do in Power Query, perhaps, right? Like sorting, filtering, adding columns. That kind of, I don't think begs the question, but it raises the question, well, why, if Power Query can do all those things that I'm mentioning, it can add columns, it can filter, why would we use Python? And that's a good question. And I think it comes down to not necessarily taste, but I would say to try out Python and Power Query. For some teams and organizations, one might be better than the other. Python's very portable. What I mean by that is everything you do is contained in a single script, right? And that script can be passed around. It can be put into a GitHub repo. It's just text. And you can use it that way. In some ways, it's a little more auditable. And what I mean by that is, Power Query has the applied steps, but if you're looking at a Jupyter Notebook, all the steps are kind of laid out there, very easy to see. Of course, you do need to know how to code, and there's a lot more. It's not as user-friendly necessarily than Power Query. There's also things like I don't know, working with, maybe you have to do some forecasting or algorithm, right? Like all the statistical data science things that Python is used for. That would be very, very hard to do with Power Query. Or maybe there's some data set, maybe you have to do something like regular expressions if you've ever done that, right? Where you need to search for a really specific pattern, or you need to find, look up valid email addresses. Or, there are use cases that Python really excels for. And there's a reason. For example, Power BI has capabilities to work with R and Python. So a couple of comments here. Anthony mentioned that Pandas is a lot faster than Power Query. For some, I can't empirically say that, but I'm sure that there are some cases, and I'm sure there are some cases where Power Query can hold its own. So I don't really know empirically one way or the other. But if you've worked on that, then so that's cool. Brent and R for stats and forecasting. Yeah, that's kind of a thing that I don't necessarily want to get into, the R versus Python. If you read Advancing into Analytics, yeah. So there are maybe some performance things to be aware of. Python for Excel talks about some of that stuff, and when Python works faster than more VBA. Felix doesn't get a lot into Power Query, but if you're interested in the performance, it's funny how I should be more prepared on some of this stuff. The same questions come up here. It's always dates, performance. What are some of the other ones that get asked all the time? Those are the ones that come to mind. And then R, I really enjoy R too, but we're not talking about R today. The other thing, for better or worse, is that Python is probably going to be the officially supported language for Excel. So, and again, that could be hearsay, but I think I have the slide in here somewhere. And and just cut me off when we're running out of time. See, like, I'm kind of lost. Like I said, I'm not feeling great anyway, so I'm kind of off on time. But anyway, maybe I don't have it. That's too bad. But there is a screenshot that I have somewhere about, if anybody remembers the user voice forum that was asked, what are the most popular feature requests for Excel. The Python integration was, by far the most popular feature request. And there was a recent response from the Microsoft team. I think it was maybe even less than a year ago, with kind of like a real cryptic message about how, we think that we'll be able to do that or something like that. So for better or worse, it's probably going to be Python that's officially supported with Excel. So that's, like why we're talking about Python now and not R. Yeah, there are ways to interface R and Python. Reticulate is a good one if you need to do that for some reason. Jod says that somebody used Python to game the Python integration submission. I guess it's possible because, it's interesting that, like I said, there seems to be a lot of demand for it, but at the same time, there's a lot of question marks around it. So, maybe there was a intervention there. Okay, so what we're going to do is go back to the slides here. How do you say slides? We're going to go back to the notebook. So hopefully you still have that up on your computer. I'm going to go here to thing 3, and we'll just run through some more, it seems like some of the folks in here are really kind of a little farther ahead than what we're covering. So hopefully you don't get bored, and if you have other comments to interject, go ahead and do so, because this is pretty basic stuff that we're covering right now. But for those of you who are brand new to this, I hope it puts you on a good footing to continue on and not get freaked out right when this demand for Python gets rolled out. It's not any harder than a lot of other stuff that you're doing now, in my opinion. It's just different, right? Because it's open source, it's a programming language. Zero-based indexing isn't even different in the case of some of the stuff that Brent and John mentioned. So yeah, so Christian says one of the new ones. So exactly. Okay, so what we're gonna do is use the standard library. So again, these are kind of like the core utilities that would come on your phone. Some of them, like I mentioned, Python wasn't really meant to be a numerical computing machine. It was really meant to be more of like a scripting language to, automate tasks on your operating system and things like that. So for example, I'm going to try to find the square root of 25. That's not available. The square root function isn't available when you open Python out of the box. What you can do is bring in a package called math, and that's one of, again, those kind of core applications from the standard library. And then I'm going to try to run this. I still get an error. So what's going on there? Square root is not defined. So the thing that's happening here is that you need to specify where your functions are coming from. So you have all these apps and you're bringing them in. By that I mean packages. And then you're going to use functions, and you're very familiar with functions from Excel. So you can do that, but you still need to specify where those packages are coming from. So that's what this is happening here. You're saying, okay, from the math package, import the square root function. I'm going to run that, and then we're going to get that square root. So another couple things to be aware of. You're going to be working with a lot of packages, so it's a good practice to get familiar with using them 9 times out of 10. And I think I have some tips on troubleshooting later on, but in a lot of cases, your problems can be fixed by either restarting it, which you could do here. So restart the kernel. This is more or less, there's something under the hood. You're more or less setting up like a local server on your computer when you're doing this. Of course, this is not your server right now, but this is a web application that's communicating with Python via a server. So if something's happening, there may be that connection, something's weird going on with the kernel. So what you can do is restart it here. That's just going to kind of hard break your session. I'm going to restart that. That's going to fix it a bunch of the time. And in this case, I think restart it, and then you could run all the cells. Or there's probably going to be a problem with your package. So, think about like VBA, where, you probably copied and pasted from all different places of the internet, and there may be some clashes between what you're doing. It's kind of a similar idea here, where you may be trying to use functionality from one package, but the version of the package you're using is a little different than the version from which you're inadvertently copying and pasting from, something like that. So, always being aware of what package you're using and where you're getting it from. You can use this little operation here. I'm seeing a lot of chat, so I'll take that in a minute here. So, for example, if you're having problems with a package, checking its version is one of the best first steps after restarting, of course. And the way you can do that here is with, so we're going to use pandas right now. Pandas, again, is one of the real common ones for data manipulation. There's also a couple, I don't think I got to those, but Matplotlib and Seaborn make really good visualizations, and we unfortunately won't have time for that tonight. But I talk about those in pretty good depth in the book, and I will get to the giveaways in a moment here. I'll go for another like 10 or so minutes, Celia, if that's good, because I think the schedule is go until 20 till. Okay, so Celia has that question, so let's go. I'll take that in a moment. But what I'm going to do is bring in that pandas package. I'm going to check for the version. One thing that you're going to see a lot with Python is this idea of aliasing. So if you're a SQL user, you might be familiar with this too. Like I mentioned, pandas or Python is just really reliant on some of these packages to work with data. And pandas is one of those that it would be really, really hard to do anything without in Python. So what you'll do here is, saves a couple of keystrokes, but hey, over time that kind of pays for itself. We will alias this and then take that version number, this double underscore. Then, that's again kind of a object-oriented programming holdover thing. But we can see here is the version that I'm on here. Okay, so let me go back to the slides. I think there were some questions and some other chat. Okay, so stuff about VBA. Yeah, I think, that's right, that, there is stuff that VBA, hopefully there will be a way in which Python can support rather than trying to fix what isn't broken with things like VBA and Power Query and this and that. Turn it off again. Okay, so that's just a technical glitch. Okay, so Celia's asking, why should we learn Python? So there's so many things available to learn. Why would you focus your time on Python? Okay, so what I would say with that is, well, we'll see how much we can get into that. I think do I have this here? Okay. What I would say with that, and this again has more to do with Power BI, but I think it's equally relevant for Excel. If there weren't a need, it wouldn't be in there, right? To port Python into Excel. I'm thinking in particular, visualizations are a good one. You can make infinitely customizable visualizations with Python. John P is here too, so he could do that with Excel. So yeah, maybe he gets an exemption. But visualizations is a good use case. Anything with like statistics or machine learning is really an obvious one. So if you need to, I was recently asked about building, and maybe Paul's here, about building a neural network in Python or in Excel, and that would be pretty difficult to do. You could do it, but maybe something like forecasting. Working with really unusual data, maybe you can do basic sentiment analysis in Excel, but Python is just kind of the lingua franca, and that's the other thing. Everybody else is using Python out there, right? If you're working with an engineer, if you're working with a database administrator, Python's kind of become the common tongue of computing now. So why not put your code in a way that others can use, or maybe maybe another team has already developed a solution for you that's in Python. I think there's a reason that there's a push to include Python as part of the Excel stack, because it's going to be that way that you can communicate with other developers and vice versa. package management, version control, some of those things like, unit testing, engineering. If you're developing some kind of a product in Excel and you'd like to set up some unit tests so that, if something fails, you can really easily catch that error. Deploying it, maybe you need to build in some Excel application that calls data in from an API or something like that. I mean, yeah, a lot of that stuff you could do with VBA, but like I said, Python is a very common language, and it's built to do those things that would be very hard. I think that check out the preface of this Python for Excel book. I think he makes a really good use case for why you should be interested in some of these things. And maybe you took some statistics classes in school and you enjoyed it, and that's something that you'd like to take to the next level of your analysis, right? Like, it's one thing to draw your scatter plot and then put in the trend line or just automatically add the clusters. But it's another thing to understand, well, is that trend line significant? Should I be adding a trend line? How are those clusters derived? And Python is great for kind of peeling back what you're seeing with the data and putting, a statistical spin on it and understanding whether what you're seeing is for real or not. Yeah, okay, so Paul's here. Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, so maybe some of these things will help with that, Paul. Okay, all right, so did that answer the question, Celia? Or if anybody else has any other questions, then let us know. All right, I'll go for a couple more minutes. I don't know if I'll necessarily have time to get through this whole example, but one of the things, actually, let's focus on this flowchart for right now. So I think one of the bigger questions, we're talking about using Python and Excel, is how does that work? What's the flowchart, right? So another kind of different thing with Excel versus Python is that you generally don't store your data in Excel. I'm sorry, you generally don't store your data in Python. You can kind of think it like how Power Query works now, right? Where you have data coming from somewhere else, and then you do all the stuff inside of that query, and then you send it someplace else. So Python works a lot like that. You don't necessarily store your data there, but you're taking it from someplace, you're doing it, and then you're sending it somewhere else. We're just going to use Excel as a use case, but one of the things, like I mentioned, maybe you do want to work with audio or video data, right? Like maybe you've been asked to work with calls, right? Phone calls from a call center. You could do that with Python, right? You could take that audio and turn it into something that you can analyze. Maybe you want to analyze facial expressions or something like that. I mean, a lot of this stuff you could do with the help of Azure as well, but you could do that with Python too, right? So some of these more unusual data sets you could work with using Python. But we're just going to stick with the basics. Excel, you're going to bring this in. Now, pandas, like I mentioned, is the one that you want to know if you're working with dates, if you want to calculate a column, any of that kind of Power Query-esque stuff, you'll use with pandas, okay? But what pandas cannot do, and this gets into more of the VBA-esque kind of things, where if you need to maybe build a chart in Excel, you want to build a report that has charts, that has conditional formatting, that locks different cells, adds some workbook protection. If you're focused on more than just the data that you're trying to get into Excel, if you want to also add things, like formatting the columns and that sort of thing, then that's where pandas kind of fails. And some of these other packages come in handy. Now, some of these packages can do a whole lot of other things, like we mentioned, writing your UDF in Excel using Python. So there are other use cases. But this is really the basic flowchart. And again, I've got, well, actually, you've got the screenshot from the slide deck. But hopefully this is kind of helpful in seeing, well, where does Python start and end? Or what does pandas have to do with these other packages? I think I have. Here are some of the other real common ones for working with Excel and Python. So you may, maybe later on, just kind of run through these, Google each of them, see, walk through the documentation on each and kind of see what you can learn. They've all got their pros and cons, as I say here. But, the ones that I think are probably, these are more or less listed in the order in which that I use them. And, you know, if anybody is doing this already, then let us know and what packages you're using. I think the one that I don't have on here is that PyXLL, the one that does Excel add-ins with Python. So maybe I can add that one. But, you know, these are some of the ones that you might see. And then the basic workflow is going to look something like this. Okay, so I have this demonstration, but I don't think we have the time. So I'll keep going. And then, oh, cool. So I'll have to check out that Python resource from John as well. All right. So yeah, last one, point 5, is don't freak out. There are a lot of ways to get help. And again, you know, with a presentation like this, we only have an hour, so you're not going to learn everything. You're never going to learn everything. So the best I can do is kind of get you in a place where you can learn things for yourself. So here are a few common ways to do that. You can check out, I've got a blog post here, and you've got the slide deck, so I won't go further on that. You can check that out later if you would like. Okay, if there are any questions, let me know. As far as resources and so forth, and we're right at about the hour. So here's that, again, that white paper, and I may as well put this in the link again, because what I'm going to do right now is, let me stop my screen share, and hopefully you can, if you've not yet, you can have your name in the running for the books. Let me open my email here and get everybody's names, because what I'm going to do is take the names here, and I am just going to really quickly draw a couple of these names. So the nice thing with this is I know that you're here. Since that's the problem with just taking the roster of signups, is that I don't necessarily know who is in the audience. Of course, I'm having issues here because why not? It's online. I think let me use Excel Online. I'm getting an unauthorized Excel product error. I have no idea why, other than because it's online. All right. Okay, so and if you have any questions, you can go ahead and throw them in the chat, and I'll get to them real quickly here. All I wanted to do is just shuffle these randomly, and then we'll pick a couple. And like I said, depending on where you are, it may be an ebook, maybe a paperback copy. So just be aware of that. And let's go ahead and do.
Are you planning to share your screen or no? I'm not sure if you wanted to.
Oh, you know what? I was just gonna, for the sake of anonymity.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have emails and things like that there, maybe.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just gonna take the first two that are up on my screen. So I just dumped it into Excel. If you want to know what I'm doing behind the scenes, I dumped everything into Excel, and I just put a rand column to the right of it, and then I just hard coded those and sorted by that rand column. So not real sophisticated, but it works in a bind here.
It works.
Yeah. All right.
You went with Excel, not Python.
Yeah, because with Python you have to read it. I guess you could read it in from the clipboard, but that could get a little messy, because basically I just copied and pasted from my email provider, right? So stuff like that doesn't always copy in from the clipboard. I just want to make a point that
Excel always wins in the end.
Yeah, for quick and dirty stuff like this, you can't beat it. Okay, so what I did is what I just described. So I have two names here that just popped up to the top. So first one is Will S.
From Edmonton, I believe.
Okay, cool. All right, so Will S. And then I'm also looking for Victoria Varga. So congratulations to both of you. If Will's in Canada, I'm very sure that we can get you a paperback. It may take some time.
I think that's the Will. I'm not sure if I'm
Will,
names.
Pleasant Solutions.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
He's
So
in Canada.
Great. Yeah, we can get, it might take a while just with the crazy state of affairs
And
these
Victoria,
days.
she says she's in Toronto too.
Okay, cool. So yeah, those are, well, I can get you a paperback for both of those. So you will email me, let me know. I'll need your full address and I need a phone number too for international. So just send me that stuff and we'll get you a copy. Let me see if there's anything else.
Congratulations. Yes.
Yeah,
Thanks,
congratulations. Let me share, because I do have a consolation prize if you didn't win. You can go to my website, and I'll put this in the chat in a minute here. So if you go to stringfastanalytics.com/book, this will have a bunch of information about the book. There's going to be a link to read it for free. So you can go to the publisher's website and they give you a 30-day read for free. It's a pretty cool learning platform. It's got a lot of content there, but you can read the book and all the instructions are here. So you use that promo code. Or you can pick up a copy if you'd like, whatever you decide. Another thing I have going on next week, I believe it is now, I have a workshop intro to the book. So this is going to be kind of a, I think, about 70-minute intro, just kind of walking through the basics of exploring and summarizing data in Excel. So it'll fit along with the first part of the book. So if you'd like a refresher on, how do you summarize? What is a continuous variable? How does an average work? Those, important things of exploring data. I'm also going to send you a signed copy of the book just to go along with that workshop. So this is a paid event, but if you want a copy of the book and hey, maybe you want to buy yourself a nice Christmas gift here with things coming up, you can sign up for that. And again, this is may as well put that in the slides as well, in the chat, I should say. But if you want to read the book on your own, you could do that too. You can read it for free on the publisher's website. However you decide, you could pick up a copy on your own. Go for it. I think you'll get something out of it. And if you want to leave a review of the book, that's very, very welcome. I love supporting the community by doing these meetups. And, I would love it if you could support the community by telling people what good content's out there. So it's a win-win. All right. Okay, so, and then there are a bunch of other books. So we talked about Python for Excel. Automate the boring stuff with Python. I believe you can get this one online for free. So, if you're interested in, maybe you need to work with Google Sheets. I hate to use that name here. Or maybe you need to, I don't know, automate sending emails or some crazy thing. I mean, like I said, Python is so interoperable with so many other applications. And this automate the boring stuff walks through a lot of those use cases. And then Python for data analysis. Kind of the name is self-explanatory, but that gets into some of those things, like if you were interested in how would I work with dates in Python, or how does pandas work? We didn't get too much into those details. We really just kind of looked at the kind of DNA of Python today and how that might fit in with Excel. So hopefully that was a good introduction for you to get excited to learn more. All right, so this is how you can get a hold of me. Love to hear. I've spoken with a lot of you one-on-one in the past, so it's always good to see you again. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. If you like memes, follow me. You can go to my website, and a lot of you are signed up for the newsletter now, so that's great. Please keep in touch there. I try to make it valuable for everybody. Send me a note. I want this to be as long-term of a relationship as possible, and I hope that when and if the announcement comes that there's something official with Python and Excel, that you kind of have your go bag ready now and you understand why and the what and all that. So that was my mission. I hope I achieved that. And if there are any questions, we've got time. So John says he's about 10% of the way through. That's okay. Celia, she's even got a copy.
Here. It makes I started it. I didn't go much further into it yet.
Well, if
Thank
you
you
want
so
to
much, George.
hear, my book is noticeably shorter than Felix's. So if you're looking for something more achievable, then maybe you want to start with mine. But like I said, they're both really good books. There's just different focus. Mine's getting into things like linear regression, correlation. I love stats. I did a lot of it in school, and it's just something I've always enjoyed. So I try to bring some of that to Excel and other tools like Python and R. Felix's book is really good too. He's getting more into things like automating workbooks, calling VBA modules from Python, and more into the kind of development side of things. So I mean, they're both
That's
important skill sets. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, George. Really interesting subject. There's a lot of hype, how people say it these days, around Python and R and Excel and all that. So it was nice to have this place to get together people interested about this topic together today. Let's see. I don't think there's any other questions.
So it looks like the link that John sent from my online training, like the fourth or fifth post down, is how to write UDFs in Excel using Python. So that's what I talked about, and it walks through how to do that. There's some pretty interesting stuff you could do there. And the Python for Excel book goes into that in pretty big depth as well, and some other pretty interesting use cases for working with Python in Excel. So anyway, okay. Yeah, thank you, Alan, for coming. Thank you, Grene. I think I said that right.
Yes, Grania.
Grania, okay.
Irish.
First, I'm sure I'm the first person to
I've
not
been
get
training.
that one.
I've been practicing.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, George, as well, for doing this session, despite not feeling so well today. But it was very informative, and I think that it's a good starting point for whoever wants to explore and start learning about it. My perception is that it's one more coding language that you can take advantage of, and it seems that it can be integrated with so many different applications that probably that's one of its strengths. For example, VBA works on the Microsoft environment applications, and it's very powerful there. Well, it also can connect with other things, right? We can use VBA.
Fair enough,
with many other data sources, and even with Google and all that. But it seems that Python is a modern language that can runs online and can be integrated with so many different things that probably is worth to start exploring it, and it probably will depend on the type of business cases that you get to solve, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that seemed like a very fair takeaway, and to some extent you do have to choose your battles and what you want to focus on, but I hope that you don't necessarily just think of Python as a tool for machine learning, for example. There are things that you can take advantage of for your day-to-day report automation tasks. And, I guess my case would be give it a try if you find reasons for it. And if you like it, I mean, like I said, and to some extent, it does come down to taste. Maybe you just enjoy working with Python more than VBA for whatever reason. Well, you're probably going to have that opportunity, and you already have ways to do it now. And there are, those business cases as well that Celia mentioned. So it's kind of a complex soup of considerations. There's no hard and fast rule, but there is a reason that the stuff is available. If you're a Power BI user, there's ample use cases for Python there as well as R. So I hope that this kind of demystified what it's all about, and that between the white paper that you'll have a copy of now and the book, if you choose to read it, that you will feel a little more less freaked out about whatever is going to happen with Python and R. So thank you. Yeah, Anthony, the Summer of George is, yeah, that's a Seinfeld reference. And glad everybody hung tough through the meeting. You got to kind of walk inside my uh, ill delirium, stream of consciousness as as I'm under the weather. I kind of jump all over the place, but maybe that's not so different from when I'm feeling well. So I can't just blame that.
Okay. Any other questions? It's time almost to wrap it. So let us know. If not, I just wanted to tell you that this was our last session of 2021. I can't believe it. It was the other day. I think the first one in 2021. It was me presenting about Power Query. It seems like it was yesterday. The year went by very fast for me. And I hope to continue to see you in the new year. The next meeting will probably be more towards the end of January. So we will take kind of a break now, the rest of the month of December and beginning of January, and we will return in the second half of the month. I want to wish you all happy holidays. Enjoy your time off if you have that with your family or loved ones. And hopefully you'll be here next year to start continue to learn and share and learn from each other. It's always so nice to have you all here. George, get better, please, soon.
I will try.
Hi, yes. Vivek, nice to see you there. You're muted.
Oh, wow.
Or I can't hear you. We cannot hear you, Vivek. Maybe you're muted or it's not working.
Oh, I think
we can hear you.
Oh, it's a Surface headphone.
Okay.
So I want to just say one.
No, you cannot. I cannot hear you now.
I think you got muted.
Cannot hear you. Lost you again. Is it the wireless thing?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to say one thing, Celia. You started this year with like amazing growth in the community and all, Excel community, and what you have achieved during this 1 year is amazing. So thank you for that. Continue doing that. We learn a lot during this 1 year, and you have invited so many guests who can share their knowledge, right from the MVP to all the Excel.
Yeah, we lost you again, Vivek, but I want to thank you for your kind words. Now you cut again. I have to confess, this is a little bit of a selfish service that I do for myself. It's for all of us. I mean, but I'm always so excited when I see someone posting about any topic Excel related they are exploring, that I just go, oh, I want to learn about that. Let's bring this person let's invite this person into the meetup and see if we can all learn a little bit, and maybe some people will get value out of it. And I've learned so much, not only in this meetup group, even in other community events before we started the meetup. And that was one of the reasons why I thought it would be a good idea to start one, because a lot of things that I use in my work, I first heard of them in free sessions like this one, and I became aware of those concepts just because of those free sessions. And I know the work that it goes into preparing a presentation of 1 hour. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of sometimes anxiety when people are not so used to present to a group, and even less online and live. So it's just we have to thank to everyone who has accepted the invitation to come here and put in the time and the effort and the generosity to share what they know for free with other people. So thank you, Vivek, for your support all the way since the beginning. And yeah, thank you everyone for. It wouldn't be fun if it wasn't for all the people who joined the conversation, the call, and who interact in the chat. So it's just fun.
Have you been?
So George, one thing
Yeah.
I want to ask you. I saw some comment on the chat, but where are you from?
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
So the other side of the lakes. Yeah. Have you been plotting your hair growth there, Vivek?
Oh,
That
2
would
years,
make a
man.
nice dashboard.
See,
the
2 years.
the growth over time. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Celia, for having me. It'll be nice. I remember back in the day, whenever that was, we were kind of dreaming of doing an in-person presentation to you guys because I'm not really that far. I mean, I could get there, in like 6-7 hour drive, something like that from Cleveland. And I've got some friends up that way too, but good luck seeing anybody these days.
Yeah, we met in person in 2019, right. Maybe.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were planning, oh, next time you come here into Toronto,
right,
you come and present, and now we have been online. I'm not sure if we ever go in person or we do kind of a mix. For now, I think it's still safer to stay online. It's also a little bit of less work, I would say, trouble for me, because the location where we were presenting before does not exist anymore, right, because it was a Microsoft store that closed. There's the Microsoft Reactor place. I'm not sure if they are doing the in-person events already again or not.
They are not.
Yeah, they are not doing that yet. So yeah, and I live I live further from Toronto now than I used to. So for me, it's just much more practical to run everything from home. But it's different to be talking like this or meeting in person. Totally different, right? So the networking and getting to know people in person is a totally different experience. We will consider that in the future, depending on how things evolve. But for now, there's not a plan to go back to in-person meetings. And I guess that if we do that at some point, I will try to find a way and the means to being able to run both in person, but still giving the opportunity to whoever is not in town to attend from afar. So yeah. That's it. I guess it's Happy New Year to everyone. Happy holidays, and enjoy the rest of your 2021, and hopefully we'll meet again in 2022.
Celia, just I wanted to add, I just posted the link on our chat, Global Power Platform Bootcamp. Mm-hmm. It is happening all over the world. Last year we had a 76 location, 6 continent, all over the world. You are a part of Canada event. I know that you already confirmed. So if you are anywhere in the world and you want to know about Power Platform, so it is related to Excel as well. So Power BI, overall Power Platform work. And if you are an expert and you want to present, it is open for you. So you can be a presenter because it is at the global level and it is organized at the local level. So
people can submit to present.
Yeah.
It's open for call for papers. Okay, people can use the link and propose their topics to present
And
there.
George,
Yeah, it's a great event. Yeah.
Yeah, George, submit your topic.
Okay. I might be asleep at that point. We'll see. I'll take a look at the schedule.
It's in the February.
No, it's in
Oh, it
February,
is.
so you still have time
okay.
to get better. No
I
excuses.
thought that was the one that was happening now or whatever. I'll
No,
take a look. I'll take a look.
No, it's in February. Still accepting proposals. Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Okay. So we're good. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I'll see you around and see you soon.